All right, everybody. This is ILY Justice League, the DCCU, my DCCU. So if you follow any of my content on IG, if you follow any of my content on YouTube, um, I'm just a fan of superhero content. But in this particular video, we're talking the next Spider-Man, right? The next Spider-Man 4. And from a previous video that I got a lot of views on, and I will put it at the end of this video, the link to the end of this video. I posed the question that Tobey was Uncle Ben's variant, and that even though it was not stated, which I feel Marvel really missed the opportunity to state that in the movie, or address it. Actually, I shouldn't even say state it, address it. I feel like there were a lot of scenes between Tom and Tobey where they could have acknowledged that Uncle Ben said the great responsibility line. Not that I've had a problem with Marissa Tomei being the one to deliver it, or if you want to say originated it. I took it from the scene where she died, that with Tom saying, I know, came more from a understanding that the line had been said before in the past. And then when you go back to Civil War, how he vaguely talked about Uncle Ben. He never said his name, of course, but he was saying like everything going on with May. And I think, I do think, but also, that it had something to do with Ben's death. And then even Marissa Tomei herself has stated in like other interviews that Uncle Ben died. Even in one of her most recent interviews, she was saying after Ben died, instead of having a relationship with Happy, she was looking forward to maybe even May exploring a lesbian relationship, like getting with a woman or whatever. And to each their own. It's Marvel's movie; they can do what they want. But just us shooting the shit, fan theorying. Like I said, I believe that Uncle Ben should have been Tobey Maguire as a variant of Uncle Ben. So for anybody in my last video or my previous video about this, stating like I was trying to say like Tobey should have been Uncle Ben playing Spider-Man, like no, that's crazy. Like I don't even know where anybody was coming from with that, but no, I meant that he was a variant. That means he was a doppelganger. He looks just like Tom Holland, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben, and that would have been the thing. And then I just would have needed Tom in No Way Home to address that, like, yo, you look just like him or something like that. But I even feel like the looks and the glances Tom gave him, and he looked like he had a deeper connection to Tobey's Spider-Man than he even did to Andrew's, even though they all three did get along, and I like that, of course, from nostalgia and growing up on all three movies. I would say that Tom Spider-Man, that would be his uncle, and like he saw him again, and maybe you can explain away, or Marvel could explain away why he didn't tell him at the time, but then at the same time, behind the scenes, Tobey and Andrew in real life said they didn't give away a lot of what was going on with their Spider-Man, and that could be due to also them reprising their roles in maybe solo movies coming in the future, which I hopefully that happens. I really do hope we get the Amazing Spider-Man 3, because I have a lot of ideas for that. I'm gonna probably make some more videos on that as well. But for like this first scene, I would say you have Aunt May sitting here in the hospital talking to Uncle Ben and everything like that. And I think that would be great. She's talking to him and they're discussing, his injuries. I've made video commentary, or not video commentary, well, I've made posts where I would say that Uncle Ben knew that Peter was Spider-Man as well. Like, he was the first one to find out, just to change up Tom Holland's backstory. So you could see like an opening scene where he sees Tom, he catches him when he's doing the whole, sweater suit, beginning Spider-Man suit, and more like Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider type looking suit. And it could be that Uncle Ben knew that he was Spider-Man and even aided him in his vigilantism to begin with. And basically that could come out of a place where, let's say this, let's say Uncle Ben was a busy person, working business. Maybe he worked for Oscorp, even though I know No Way Home kind of gave the impression or the existence that there is no Oscorp. So we could scratch that if you don't want Oscorp. Let's just say he worked, financial business administration, something like that, and he was busy a lot. And then he's really Peter's like blood relative, connection to his mother father type thing. And Aunt May and him are still getting friendly with each other in the beginning, but she loves him, of course, how she always has. But Ben was his real connection of like, his last little bit of family in a way. It could be that Ben was very busy, but he was trying, maybe with late night talks with May. Hey, I'm going to actually try to spend time with Peter. Him spending time with Peter, how I look at that, it would come off as he wanted to spend more time with him. May probably, like I said, talking to him about it. And then what would happen is he would start to spend more time with Peter, but then he discovered that he's Spider-Man. So then it sparks even just a little more interest, but his hardcore value would be that he was spending time with his nephew. But then but they also took an interest in Peter's powers, discovering what he could do, and it was about protecting him. That was his responsibility. That's his great power as being the uncle, being the protector, even though like your nephew has developed this superhuman strength and all these abilities, but it's protector. But Peter just sees it, hey, like, I'm finally having time with my uncle. I would say how the story would reveal up to this point of the pictures you're seeing on your screen is Peter ends up, basically spending a lot of time with Uncle Ben as Spider-Man. And they do some very civilian things together, go get ice cream, talk about girls, all that kind of stuff, maybe prequel-ish, he's telling her about a girl that he's liked for a long time. I don't know how long he liked the Liz Toombs or Liz Allen in Homecoming. I don't know if it was like a thing from like elementary school or anything like that. But it could be like, if you can find a way, or Marvel can find a way to mix it as canon, just put it where like he liked her and he discussed that with, Uncle Ben before, or Uncle Ben has even brought up the MJ girl, because I don't know how long he's known MJ for, but maybe even Uncle Ben has, like, hey, that MJ girl, she's pretty nice, but Zendaya's character, how she was in Homecoming, maybe Peter wasn't looking her way exactly like that, but so he might have brushed that off at the time. But I would do it where basically Uncle Ben ends up like, having this big business meeting, and it was a contemplating of like go to Peter's like science fair or something important to Peter, like something real important. And he probably wasn't going to cancel, but like the way Peter got wind of it, I would say it sounds like he's choosing work over him. And then the way Peter rationalizes it, like, wait, you only want to spend time with me, or it looks like you only want to spend time with me when there's Spider-Man stuff going on. And then I would say that would lead to basically Uncle Ben, him getting into some type of argument, Peter already getting ready to go out on his like patrols of the neighborhood, and he leaves and they have like a big argument. From there, Peter would leave, and probably in his partial sadness, so he's probably like tearing up, whatever, but he's still trying to do his duty, he goes out. Now, you could have Uncle Ben deliver the great responsibility line before, or in this flashback, maybe, depending how long this would be, because this has to be like an extensive flashback, even if you break it up over a couple scenes, like he starts to say it, and Peter cuts him off. And then, so he goes on patrol, and they have this argument, and Ben's upset himself, but he realizes Peter left his web shooters. At that time, I would say May comes home. Ben tries to like get the web shooters off the table, hides them from her. Maybe like he's holding a handful in like his, backhand pocket, gets by her by the door, gives her a kiss, tell her, oh, actually, I'm gonna go look for Peter. He should have been home already. Maybe he's down by the deli or something. Something, some way to get out the house. But he goes looking for Peter because Peter's short on web fluid. He's gonna need it, and when he shows up, Peter is, he finds Peter. Maybe through cell phone tracking. Maybe he just gets lucky, walking around the neighborhood, and realizes there's a burglary and Spider-Man's fighting the burglars, and he gets there and Peter's running into like a little issue because the web fluid is low. Ben steps in to help, like say like one of the robbers is going to stab Peter or do something to him, very, very badly. So then I would say Ben would step in at that point, help fight the attackers, but of course get fatally like stabbed himself. And you can take this in a number of ways because it doesn't have to be a stabbing. It doesn't have to result in something like that, like, Uncle Ben always getting shot or stabbed. But it would continue with the same mythos. And especially, like, if Tom is remembering this now that he's this new Spider-Man in a way, not the new because, it's still the same universe. It's just that people don't remember he's Peter Parker or remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man or whatever. So it would be him remembering his actual memories that technically took place, but then the spell happened. So, like, it could be like the beginning of the movie. I would, like, I'd waste, good 5-10 minutes on that in the beginning of the movie. And then when you come to back to reality, or back to present day, he's sitting in his apartment in the fire escape or in the window, maybe getting ready to, go on patrol as Spider-Man, or he's studying or something like that. But, yeah, but these scenes would be the hospital scenes. And most likely here, when I designed these scenes, it was more like he delivered the line at the hospital before he died. And you could play it one of two ways. I would say you could do it one way where it's just Aunt May getting the line, like him delivering the line to Aunt May, and then she said it to Peter in No Way Home. Or we could do it that they were together, Peter and May, and Ben delivered the line to both of them. And then that canonizes the I know because that's where he said it. Then it also canonizes Andrew and Peter telling him Uncle Ben said it the day he died because he also said it to Peter and May the day he died. And that would be good. Like, I think that'd be great if Marvel could find a way to run that back and canonize it. I don't feel it takes away anything from Aunt May's saying it because you got to remember, depending on how long Peter lived with them, it could have been a long time, it could have been a short time since whatever happened to his parents and he ended up living with them. So he may still not have gotten the full gist of Uncle Ben. Maybe the person he's really known mostly growing up overall with some of his memories of Ben is May. So her delivering that line, he's still living that line for both of them, for him and her. And I also have my side theory that since Tobey should have been Uncle Ben's variant, when May had got stabbed, I mean, it would have been emotional, probably would have had everybody crying in the theaters, but I kind of wish Tobey showed up then. Like when, like maybe they were both trying to help her, but, it's a lost cause because she lost so much blood, how she was, impaled. But it would have been nice, like when she saw him, she referred to him as Ben because, she's, well, not I don't think delusional is the right word, but kind of like hallucinating, like she's like dying and stuff. And there's the multiverse, but she's not thinking about that right now. If she saw Tobey's face and she would like put like her blood soaked hand or something on his face and been like, Ben, like I knew you'd come for me. And he didn't have the heart to tell her that he wasn't Ben because one, it might have to be her acknowledging that she's actually dying. And I really should do a super separate video on this because we're talking about, just totally being Uncle Ben. But yeah, that would have been a tearjerker scene, I think, for the audience. I mean, you guys can let me know if you can agree in the comments or not. But yeah, if like Tobey had shown up when she died and then that would have been the reveal that he was Ben's doppelganger. Besides, Tom just telling him or him saying like, hey. Because he also said he was looking for Tom. So who knows? Maybe his spider senses could have led him to the apartment. I know he's not Wolverine, so he's not like out here sniffing people. But like just in case he did find a way to get to Peter Parker's apartment, maybe he saw a picture. So maybe even when Tom went to go tell him like, hey, you're a version of my Uncle Ben, it was like, I already know. But No, the way I see it, man, like they could have done a lot of things there to push that Uncle Ben variant in the MCU, and I kind of hope they do it. Like I hope they eventually pay that off, maybe with another Spider-Man movie where they start like once Sony, and I say Sony, not Marvel Studios, but Sony inside themselves. Hopefully they can come up with a successful Spider Verse. I'm not saying don't get any help from Kevin Feige, of course, because he's doing amazing work. But if they could solidify their Spider Verse on their side, where it's self contained when they're doing those movies most of the time, especially when it involves actual traveling the multiverse, but for a Spider Man related problem, um, I would say, yeah, a combo again between the three Spider Men. Not saying that we can never have a combo where some other Spider Men are involved, but especially for Andrew, Tom, and Toby, and hopefully when the DVDs and stuff come out, that they show um maybe more of that conversations that they had. But I would say it would be nice, yeah, for like whether it's the three of them or maybe one offs, like where it's Tom and Toby at one point, and then maybe Tom and Andrew at one point having conversations. But like, I would like that conversation between Tom and Toby's Spider Man, where he tells him like, "Yo, like the funny thing is, you look exactly like my uncle," and then that's it. That canonizes it right there. And of course, from what you're seeing on your screen, like the pictures of Toby in the hospital and Tom and May being there and him being Uncle Ben in that version of the scene, that would be a good, I think, opener to a future Spider-Man movie. Like where it opens up, Ben's in the hospital bed or whatever, and then throughout the movie we could get the flashback of how he passed. I mean, actually, that works out perfectly. Like, so you don't even have to waste the first like 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, however long it would take to fit a scene like that in, where it's like, okay, we got to watch Peter being Spider-Man, getting found out by Uncle Ben, getting in that argument with him, Uncle Ben defending him, in a fight, dying because he wasn't like skilled enough or wasn't prepared enough, because if he had his web shooters, what I'm saying, by the time he got the web shooter in, Uncle Ben has been stabbed or killed or whatever, shot, and then he's there with him, and then maybe even Uncle Ben tells him he has to leave because Spider-Man can't be seen here, he's supposed to be a hero or whatever, and then he has to like go home and change and then come back and pretend like he didn't know what was happening to Uncle Ben. So now when he returns to the scene, it's like, I left him. He could have probably saved him if he stayed and outed him his identity and just called the police probably. But it's like he left. But then Uncle Ben probably already knew like his injuries were fatal. But due to the scenes I created, that wouldn't be the case. It'd be that he'd go home and he'd come back in time. He'd come back in time, and then maybe even Uncle Ben, maybe with some of his strength still with him, maybe when Peter's swinging back home, he calls him and he sets it up to like give the alibi. Like, I called his cell phone, let him know I was hurt. He came back in, told May he was at the deli or something like that, or told her he was somewhere where he could like maybe prove it. Not that he would need an alibi. I would say like we'll look it over. Like the police didn't really look into it because like he's a kid. Like they're not gonna look like, oh, did you do something to your uncle? So then you could play it where he goes back home. He tells me he just got a call from Uncle Ben saying he's hurt. He's on the corner of, whatever. They know Queens very well. So they go, or May calls an ambulance to the scene. They go. When they get there, they're helping him. He's like, Uncle Ben kind of singing Spider-Man's praises. Maybe not singing them, of course, because he's injured. But he would be like, yo, Spider-Man tried to help me. He got the bad guys and whatnot. And I thought he went off to, get help. Or, I mean, that kind of sounds bad because then it makes it seem like Spider-Man wasn't going to help. But maybe he's like, hey, there was another person. He thinks there was another person and Spider-Man went after them. So that can explain like why Spider-Man left, because he probably was pursuing another person if there was another person. But yeah, overall, I think like that's the way it could play out. Like, and that would be the way to make Toby the variant of Uncle Ben. And he's dead, just for anybody that is, thinking like, oh no, this shouldn't be Tobey, but it's like he'd be dead. So we're not trying to bring Tobey Maguire back into the MCU. You know what I'm saying? I would rather him. And if you've seen any of my other edits and art that I do on my Instagram, which you can check out in the link below, what I would do with that there is I would more want Tobey to do his own standalone movies, maybe doing another trilogy if he was up to it, and let that trilogy start to introduce Spider-Girl, because on my page I've made some edits of that where there's a daughter to Tobey and Mary Jane, more so maybe Petra Parker. I would say I'd leave the Mayday name for Tom Holland if his Spider-Man goes all the way to adulthood and has children, just to give the namesake of May to that girl. But I would do Tobey with the daughter, and then start her trilogy off. You know what I'm saying? So maybe you do Spider-Man 4, then do her first movie. Then after that, maybe do the next two Spider-Mans, and then we come back with her being a little older, being a little more mature. But she's shown up in Tobey's last two movies in 5 and 6. And I'm not saying we have to kill Tobey off at any point in time, unless that's what the actor would want to like end the legacy, and also so they might not be asked to come back all the time. But what I would do is I would just probably make it like till Tobey retires, and then you put her in there, and then maybe through the Spider-Verse movies, she and Tom Holland start teaming up, because he'd still be preferably young, but he'd be like the still same father figure or even older brother figure to her in a way. But I would say, yeah, I think this would be a great way to canonize the Uncle Ben character, and also just multiversally bring it full circle that, even when Tom went to go kill Goblin, I felt it was more symbolic that he was being stopped by Uncle Ben and not even just Tobey Spider-Man. Like, yes, you're being stopped by another Spider-Man, but the Spider-Man looks like your uncle who told you about great power and great responsibility, who was married to your aunt, who always told you to do the right thing, and also taught you about great power and great responsibility. So basically embodied in this man was a whole family reunion, technically, after you've lost two of the most important people in your life, and even three, if we count Tony Stark. So I think Marvel making that connection of Tobey being Uncle Ben would have played even more significance into those last scenes, or into a couple scenes with even like when they were doing the Science Bro stuff. I think Tobey being acknowledged as being Uncle Ben's variant from there would even have made more sense. Well, like I said, it's Marvel, it's theirs, it's their property, they can do what they want. But that would just be, this would be my theory or way, you could take it either way, of putting Tobey Maguire as Uncle Ben in the MCU. That would be it. I also would say, if you want to, like I said in the description below, you have all of my contacts. Follow me on Instagram, subscribe here, and I'll still have more videos coming soon. There's things I want to do with the Flash, DCEU on the whole. I got stuff to talk about that for days, and I got some more Spider-Man stuff. Have some ideas for The Amazing Spider-Man 3, of course. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see all those edits, and I will be taking like those pictures and any newly created edits, start probably putting those together to help make these videos as well. All right, so this is OI Justice League signing off. Please like, subscribe, and follow.